White Russian. I'm just kidding. That was milk with water. I don't drink. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Player Entertainment. My name is Chris, and in case you don't know, I review movies and I rank them on a scale of 0 to 100 in increments of 5. Today, I'm going to be reviewing what is often considered to be the greatest comedy ever made, The Big Lebowski. The Big Lebowski sort of burst onto the scene in 1998, and it developed a cult following over the years. This is a very strange movie because the Coen brothers didn't make this movie in a traditional sense. They took a lot of risk with this movie that I will go over, and I think that's part of the reason why it became such a cult hit. In my opinion, the greatest comedy ever made is Ghostbusters, but a lot of people consider this to be the greatest comedy ever made, and I can definitely see why. It is a very interesting film. I've heard that some film critics, lovers, some film philanthropologists, or however you say that word. Anyway, some people who really look deep into film have considered this to be the best movie ever made. There are books about this movie that go into the deeper layers of this film. This film has really had a very interesting impact on people. And the funny thing is that I don't really think there's a lot there. I just think it's a really entertaining, funny movie, an interesting movie, in my opinion. But people really like to delve deep into this film, which is good. I'm glad that people are interested enough in film that they want to do that. But for me, this movie is pure entertainment. It's such an interesting movie. And I love it. I love it. There's a lot about this movie that doesn't make sense, but I love it. So let's get into it. So The Big Lebowski came out in 1998. By the way, do you like my shirt? Yeah, you like my Medina Sod shirt? Yeah. Anyway, so The Big Lebowski came out in 1998, and it stars Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, Julianne Moore, Steve Buscemi, David Huddleston, Philip Seymour Hoffman, rest in peace, and Sam Elliott. It was directed by Joel and Ethan Coen, and it was produced by Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner. And this movie tells the story of an unemployed pothead, played by Jeff Bridges, he shares a name with a millionaire whose name is also Jeff Lebowski. And these guys come into his house and they beat him up, and they're asking where his money is because they think he's the rich guy, and one of them pees on his carpet. And so he goes to this other Jeff Lebowski, and he's like, "Hey, since these guys were looking for you, I think you should compensate me for the dry cleaning it's going to take to clean the urine out of my carpet." And through this, a lot of problems arise. There's a kidnapping scheme. There's this whole thing with this car getting stolen and money being missing. It's just like one problem builds up after another. And it's about this unemployed pothead who's just sort of thrown into this whole situation, all these situations that he just doesn't want to be in, but he has to deal with it. For me, this is the superior Coen Brothers film. I like this a lot better than Fargo. I thought Fargo was all right, but this, for me, this is it. I love this movie. Again, this is often considered to be the best comedy ever made, and I can very much see why. This movie has such a great ensemble in it. The chemistry between the actors and these characters is fantastic. Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, and Steve Buscemi play three friends, and they play off of each other really well. I love the scenes where they're just in this bowling alley talking to each other, because they play off of each other and they respond to each other really quickly. Like, you could tell there was probably like a lot of rehearsal that went into it, because they just play off each other so well, and it's really interesting to watch them have these conversations. And the thing about this movie is that a lot of what happens in this movie leads to nothing. There are plot elements that this movie discusses and presents to you, but that never get resolved. And normally this would be looked at as really bad filmmaking, but it's just the way this movie does it makes it so endearing. And watching Jeff Bridges in these situations just makes it so endearing. they took the Coen brothers. You have to give your hats off to them because they took a lot of risk with this movie by going completely away from normal writing traditions and just doing something different. And again, a lot of what happens, a lot of the things about this movie would normally be looked at as a flaw, but with this movie, it's actually what helps makes it so great. It's also a visually stunning movie. I love the visuals of this. They get all these amazing shots of things that go on in a bowling alley because our three characters love to bowl. They love bowling. That's their thing to do, is that they love to go bowling. And they get all these fantastic shots of these things that happen in this bowling alley. And they didn't even need to do all that, but it just adds so much to the film. And it's really, really great to look at. The camera work is fantastic in this film. And one of the things I watched the Nostalgia Critics video about this movie, and he had pointed out something about this movie that I didn't notice, but after he pointed it out, I began to get an even better appreciation for this film, is that the dude, that's Jeff Bridges' character, he likes to call himself the dude, he's actually kind of a great role model. He's an unemployed pothead who does nothing but hang out with his friends and bowl all day. But so you would, on the surface, that looks like a terrible role model, but he's actually a great role model because he teaches the audience to be content with what you have. He doesn't have a lot, he doesn't do a lot, and he's fine with that. He's a loser, and he's okay with that. And I think that that's a really great moral lesson, is to just be content with what you have. Be happy with what you have. So in a way, even though on the surface he seems like a terrible role model, he's actually a great role model. And the Nostalgia Critic had pointed out, and I never thought of that before, but I thought that was a really interesting thing, and I wanted to discuss that in my video. Another thing I love about this movie, that everyone loves about this movie, is Sam Elliott's character and his narration in this film. He has absolutely no reason to be in this film. His whole thing in this movie is completely and totally pointless. When he's narrating, it's great, but even his character isn't. When he's narrating, he's not really talking about anything. He's just sort of saying things, but we love it. I had read somewhere that Sam Elliott had said to the Coen brothers at some point when they were filming this movie, he said, "What the hell am I doing in this movie?" Well, nobody really knows. He's kind of pointless, but we all love having him there anyways. And that's the thing about this movie. This movie is so pointless. Everything about this movie is pointless, but it's just the way the Coen brothers did everything. And watching Jeff Bridges' character in these situations, it just makes this film so endearing. This movie took so many risks that really very, very easily normally would not have paid off. But here it did pay off. So, which is why I respect this film so much. Even if you don't like it, and the off chance that you don't like it, you do need to respect this film because they took so many liberties with this film that normally would not pay off, but here they did, and you really got to respect this film for that. It's also a very quotable movie. The dude abides. I will not stand for this aggression, man. All that is great. There's so many great lines from this movie that people love to quote, and it's really, really funny. This is a hilarious film. This is a very, very funny movie. When I first watched this movie, I didn't laugh very much. But when I watched it a second time, I realized how hilarious this film is. This is a very, very funny movie. The jokes are like quick. They sort of roll out there. But when you pick up on them, they're really great. It's not like a normal comedy where they put the jokes right there in their face and there's a lot of time devoted to the joke. This movie has quick jokes that all work really, really well. Whenever I watch this movie, I never really want it to end because the movie, it's just sort of, it's so entertaining, and you just love watching the dude in these situations that I sort of just want the story to keep going and going and going. And I gotta say, when you watch a movie that you don't want to end and you just want to keep going and going forever, I think that's an achievement. It's also commonly known as the most rewatchable movie of all time. This movie, for me, is one of the most rewatchable movies ever made. This and Back to the Future, those are two of the most rewatchable movies I've ever seen, and this movie is definitely up on that level. You could probably watch this movie like 1,000 times a day. You're never gonna get sick of it. You're never gonna get sick of watching The Big Lebowski. The Big Lebowski is so much fun to watch. You just get your friends around, roll up a blunt, or don't, because that's probably illegal where you are, and just have fun. Just watch this movie. I don't smoke, by the way, in case you're wondering. I've never touched it. But this is like a type of movie where you could just grab your friends, grab a beer, kick back, and just have a great time with it. This is a great movie to watch with your friends. It's also very creative as well. I always appreciate a high level of creativity in a movie. The dream sequences in this movie, again, they're pointless. A lot of what happens in this movie is pointless and can easily be removed. But they're just so creative. I love watching him dance with all the ladies going around him with the bowling pins on their head, and Julianne Moore is dressed like a Viking or something with big bowling balls on her chest, and it's just really, really interesting. And then you have the guy who threatened to cut off his junk, who's running out with a big pair of scissors. I love the dream sequences, and I love the amount of creativity that just went into this film overall. I love the situations that Jeff finds himself in. They're just so funny. Everything about this movie is just so funny. And one of the things about one of the liberties I was saying about this film is that a lot of these issues he gets himself into, they never get resolved. Like, he sort of gets in these situations, but then the movie ends with the dude abides. And you never like, find out many things about a lot of these plot elements. Like, you probably, like, when the movie's over, you'll be like, well, hey, what about this? What about that? What about this? But the movie just sort of ends with Sam Elliott saying random stuff that doesn't mean anything. And again, normally that would be looked at as a flaw, but with this movie, it's just the way the Coen brothers did it that just makes it so great. It just makes it so great. This movie is which is why I respect this movie so much. Is why I say, even if you don't like this movie, you should respect it, because they took a lot of risks with this film, and it's amazing how well it paid off. I love The Big Lebowski. It is by far one of the best comedies ever made, and it, of course, gets a 100. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Power Player Entertainment for more. Hit the like button. Leave me reviews, suggestions down in the comments down below. Follow me on Instagram and Tumblr at Potty Player Entertainment for channel updates and written movie reviews. And the dude abides.